the sleepy village of Limstock, a poison pen spills venom, accusing neighbors of shameful secrets. Who's behind the vicious letters? When accusations turn to murder, Jerry Burton and his sister Joanna uncover a web of lies, but the truth is deadly. Can an unassuming spinster, Miss Marple, unravel the killer's game before the next stroke falls? Dive into a mystery where every word hides a motive and every shadow holds a clue. Chapter 1. Whispers in Limstock. Train to Limstock rattled through the patchwork of English countryside, its whistle a faint cry against the hum of late summer. Jerry Burton leaned against the carriage window, his reflection wavering in the glacialine face, shadowed by months of hospital wards and the ache of a body pieced back together after a plane crash. The war felt a world away now, though its echoes lingered in the faint scar above his brow and the cane resting against his knee. Beside him, Joanna, his younger sister, flipped through a fashion magazine, her blonde curls bouncing with the train's rhythm. "Jerry, you're brooding again," Joanna said, not looking up. Her voice was bright, like sunlight cutting through fog. "Limstock's supposed to be a fresh start, not a place to sulk." "I'm not sulking," Jerry replied, though his tone betrayed a half-hearted protest. "I'm observing. This place better be as quiet as the doctor ordered." Joanna smirked, snapping the magazine shut. "Quiet? It's practically a postcard. Little houses, rose gardens, old ladies knitting by the fire. You'll be bored to death in a week." Jerry chuckled, the sound easing the tightness in his chest. Boredom sounds perfect. The train slowed, and Limstock Station came into view, a modest platform framed by ivy-covered walls and a single bench where a tabby cat lounged. Unimpressed by their arrival, they stepped onto the platform, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle and warm earth. A porter, an older man with a face like weathered oak, tipped his cap and took their bags. "Welcome to Limstock, sir, miss. High Street's just a stroll. Mind the cobbles." Their rented house, Ivy Cottage, stood at the edge of the village, its whitewashed walls glowing under the afternoon sun. Roses climbed the trellis, and a black bird trilled from a nearby ash tree. Inside, the rooms smelled of polished wood and fresh linen, a stark contrast to the antiseptic tang of Jerry's hospital days. Partridge, their housekeeper, a stout woman with a no-sense bun, greeted them with tea and a plate of scones. "You'll find Limstock peaceful, Mr. Burton," Partridge said, pouring tea with practiced precision. "Folks keep to themselves. Mostly, though there's talk, always talk." Joanna raised an eyebrow, settling into a chintz armchair. "Talk? What kind? Scandalous, I hope." Partridge's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Oh, the usual. Who's selling what? Who's courting who? Nothing to trouble you." Jerry sipped his tea, the warmth grounding him. Sounds like the perfect place to forget the world. The first few days passed in a pleasant haze. Jerry took slow walks along High Street, leaning on his cane, noting the villagers' rhythm, the butcher's boy whistling as he cycled past, the postman's cheery wave, the clatter of teacups from the Bluebell calf. Joanna, ever restless, charmed the locals with her London flair, returning from outings with tales of eccentric characters, the vicar who collected rare coins, the chemist who swore his tonics cured heartbreak. On the fourth morning, Jerry sat in the garden, sketching the curve of the hills beyond Limstock. The pencil felt foreign in his hands, a hobby he hadn't touched since the crash. Joanna burst through the gate, her cheeks flushed, holding a letter. posts here. Bills, mostly, but this one's odd. No return address. Jerry set his sketchbook aside. Probably an invitation. Someone's heard you're the life of the party. Joanna tore open the envelope, her grin fading as she scanned the contents. Jerry, this isn't an invitation. He took the letter, the paper cheap and slightly crumpled. The words were typed, jagged and uneven, as if hammered out on an old machine. You and your sister aren't fooling anyone. Living together like that, unmarried, in Ivy Cottage. Shame on you, sinners. Jerry's stomach twisted, a cold prickle running down his spine. What the devil is this? Joanna snatched the letter back, her eyes flashing. Some nasty little prank. Who'd write this? Were barely settled. Partridge appeared at the door, wiping her hands on her apron. Something wrong, miss. Joanna hesitated, then handed her the letter. Partridge's face tightened as she read, her lips pressing into a thin line. Poison pen, she muttered. Heard of these before. Someone's got too much time and not enough heart. Poison pen? Jerry asked, leaning forward. You mean this isn't the first? Partridge folded the letter carefully, as if it might bite. Not by half. Mrs. Cleet, the grocer's wife, got one last month. Accused her of stealing from the till. And Dr. Griffith had one, claiming he's poisoning patients. All nonsense, but it stings. Joanna crossed her arms. Why would anyone target us? We're strangers here. Strangers are easy marks, Partridge said grimly. No history. To defend you, Jerry stood, his cane tapping the flagstones. We should take this to the police. Partridge shook her head. Constable's a good man, but he'll say it's just words. No law against being cruel. Joanna's eyes narrowed. Then we'll find out who's behind it ourselves. Jerry shot her a look. Joe, we're not detectives. Maybe not, she said, tossing her hair. But I'm not letting some coward hide behind a typewriter. That afternoon, they walked to High Street, the letter tucked in Jerry's pocket. Like a smouldering coal. The village seemed different now, its charm tinged with suspicion. At the Bluebell Calf, they ordered tea, hoping to glean gossip. The waitress, a rosy-cheeked girl named Lily, chatted freely as she poured. Heard about the letters, have you? Poor Mrs. Symington got one last week. Called her a neglectful mother. She was in tears. Jerry exchanged a glance with Joanna. Does anyone know who's sending them? He asked, keeping his tone casual. Lily shrugged, setting down the teapot. Folks point fingers at Miss Ginch, the seamstress. She's got a sharp tongue and a typewriter, but no proof. As they left the cafe, Joanna nudged Jerry. Miss Ginch. Sounds like a start. Don't jump to conclusions, he warned. Could be anyone. Their next stop was the post office, a squat building with a creaking sign. Inside, Mr. Pye, the postmaster, greeted them with a theatrical bow. He was a small man with a penchant, 4 velvet waistcoats, and an air of knowing everyone's business. Newcomers to Limstock. How delightful, settling in. Well enough, Jerry said, forcing a smile. Though we got a rather unfriendly letter today. Mr. Pye's eyes gleamed with interest. Oh, one of those. You're not alone, I'm afraid. The village is positively abuzz. Joanna leaned on the counter, her voice honeyed. Any guesses who's behind it, Mr. Pye? He tapped his chin, clearly relishing the attention. Could be anyone with a grudge or boredom. Limstock's quiet, but secrets simmer. I'd wager it's someone respectable hiding in plain sight. Jerry felt a chill, his mind conjuring images of neighbours typing venom in the dead of night. Respectable could mean anyone, the vicar, the chemist, even Partridge. He shook off the thought. Thanks, Mr. Pye. We'll keep that in mind. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the cobbles. Joanna linked her arm with Jerry's. This place isn't so sleepy after all. That evening, Ivy Cottage glowed with lamplight, but the warmth couldn't dispel the letter's shadow. Over dinner partridges, shepherd's pie, rich with time, Jerry and Joanna debated their next move. We could confront Miss Ginch, Joanna suggested, spearing a potato. See if she flinches. Jerry shook his head. To direct. If she's innocent, we'll stir up trouble. If she's guilty, she'll cover her tracks. Then what? Joanna asked, exasperated. Sit here and wait for another letter. A knock at the door interrupted them. Partridge ushered in Mrs. Dane Calthrop, the vicar's wife, a wiry woman with sharp eyes and a scarf knotted haphazardly round her neck. I heard about your letter, she said without preamble, settling into a chair. Disgraceful business. Jerry blinked. News travels fast. Limstock's a sieve for gossip, Mrs. Dane Calthrop said, waving a hand. I've had one myself. Accused me of meddling in souls that aren't mine. Rubbish, but clever. Rubbish, clever. Joanna asked, intrigued. Oh yes, Mrs. Dane Calthrop said, her eyes glinting. The writer knows us our fears, our weaknesses. That takes observation and spite. Jerry leaned forward, his cane forgotten. You think it's someone close, a neighbour, close enough to watch, she said. But don't let it spoil your stay. Limstock's still a good place. Come to the vicarage tomorrow, tea and scones. You'll meet the real village, not just its ghosts. After she left, Jerry and Joanna sat in silence, the letter's words echoing in their minds. Jerry broke the quiet. She's right. We can't let this ruin everything. Joanna nodded, her jaw set. Fine, we'll go to the vicarage, play nice, and keep our eyes open. But I'm not forgetting that letter. Jerry smiled, a spark of his old mischief returning. Nor am I. But for tonight, let's call it a prank and sleep easy. They raised their glasses, water for Jerry, wine for Joanna, and toasted to new beginnings. The letter lay folded on the sideboard, its threat dimmed by their resolve. Outside, Limstock slept under a starlit sky, its secrets tucked away in darkened windows, waiting to unravel. Chapter 2. The Sting of Suspicion. The morning sun spilled over Limstock's rooftops, painting the cobbles gold as Jerry Burton stepped out of Ivy Cottage, his cane clicking softly. The anonymous letter from yesterday sat heavy in his thoughts, but he pushed it aside, determined to embrace the villagers' promise of peace. Joanna, already dressed in an emerald green frock, joined him, her eyes bright with purpose. Tea at the vicarage today, she said, looping her arm through his. Mrs. Dane Calthrop's invitation. Let's see what Limstock's hiding. The vicarage lay at the end of a winding lane, its garden a riot of hollyhocks and lavender. The house itself was a rambling affair, with ivy clinging to its stone walls and a weathered sundial by the gate. Inside, the air smelled of beeswax and old books. Mrs. Dane Calthrop greeted them with a brisk nod. Her scarf, now a vivid scarlet. Come in, the others are here. The drawing room was a cosy jumble of mismatched chairs and faded tapestries. A small group had gathered. The vicar, Mr. Calthrop, a wiry man with a distracted air, stirring his tea absently. Mr. Symington, a solicitor with a stern jaw and tired eyes, who offered a curt nod. and Miss Emily Barton, a frail spinster whose lace collar seemed to weigh her down. A young woman with a cascade of chestnut hair stood by the window. Elsie Holland, the Symingtons' governess, her smile polite but guarded. "Welcome to our little circle," Mr. Calthrop said, his voice soft as if addressing a congregation of one. "Limstock's not used to newcomers, but you're settling in, I trust." "Well enough," Jerry replied, easing into a chair. "Though the post has been unexpected." A ripple of tension passed through the room. Miss Barton's teacup clinked against its saucer, and Mr. Symington's fingers tightened around his spoon. Elsie Holland glanced away, her gaze fixed. On the garden, Mrs. Dane Calthrop's eyes sharpened. "You've had one, then, a letter." Joanna, perched on the arm of Jerry's chair, gave a tight smile. "Typed, nasty, and anonymous. Seems we're not special, though." Mr. Symington cleared his throat. "They're a nuisance, nothing more. My wife received one recently, accused her of neglecting our boys. Utter nonsense." Miss Barton's voice trembled. "I've heard of others, Mrs. Cleet, Dr. Griffith. It's dreadful, sowing discord like this." Mrs. Dane Calthrop leaned forward, her scarf slipping slightly. "It's more than discord. It's deliberate cruelty. Someone's watching us, picking at our fears." The vicar frowned, setting down his cup. "Now, Maud, let's not dramatize. It's likely a prankster, some idle soul with a typewriter." Jerry caught Joanna's eye, her expression skeptical. He shifted, his cane tapping the floor. "Prank or not, it's unsettling. Any idea who might have access to a typewriter?" "Elsie." Holland spoke for the first time, her voice clear but measured. "Plenty of people, I suppose. Mr. Symington has one in his office. Miss Ginch, the seamstress, uses one for her accounts. Even the post office has an old machine." Mr. Symington's jaw tightened. "My typewriter's for business, Miss Holland. I'd appreciate not being implicated." Elsie flushed, her hands smoothing her skirt. "I didn't mean enough." Mrs. Dane Calthrop cut in, her tone sharp. "Blaming each other won't help. We need to stay calm, not let these letters divide us." The conversation shifted to safer ground. Village fates. The harvest festival, but Jerry's mind lingered on the typewriter. Elsie's comment, innocent or not, had stirred the room's undercurrents. He glanced at Mr. Symington, whose gaze was fixed on his tea, and Miss Barton, whose fingers twisted her handkerchief. Someone here knew more than they let on. After tea, Joanna pulled Jerry aside in the vicarage garden, where bees droned among the lavender. "Did you see their faces? They're all hiding something." Jerry nodded, leaning on his cane. "Defensive. Miss Barton's nervous. Even Elsie seemed cagey." Joanna's eyes gleamed. "Let's take a walk, poke around. If this poison pen's watching, we might catch a clue." They strolled down High Street, the village bustling with midday life. A milk cart rattled past, and children darted through an alley, their laughter sharp against the quiet. At the chemist's shop, a bell jangled as they entered. Dr. Owen Griffith, a lanky man with ink-stained fingers, looked up from his counter, his face weary but kind. "Newcomers, eh?" he said, adjusting his glasses. "Heard you're at Ivy Cottage. Hope it's treating you well." "Well enough," Joanna said, her smile disarming. "Though we've had an odd welcome. A letter, unsigned. You've had one too, I hear." Griffith's expression darkened. "I claimed I'm slipping poison into my tonics. Vile stuff. I burned it." Jerry raised an eyebrow. "Burned it? not tempted to track down the writer. Griffith snorted, wiping his hands on his apron. Waste of time. Whoever it is, they're clever. No fingerprints, no postmark worth tracing. Best to ignore it. As they left the shop, Joanna whispered, "He's too quick to dismiss it. Suspicious." "Or practical," Jerry said, though. Doubt gnawed at him. Griffith's nonchalance felt forced, like a man whistling past a graveyard. Their next stop was the village hall, where preparations for the harvest festival were underway. Women bustled about, arranging flowers and stacking jam jars. Mrs. Cleet, the grocer's wife, stood out, a broad woman with a florid face, barking orders like a general. Joanna approached, offering to help with a tray of scones. "You're the Burtons," Mrs. Cleet said, eyeing them. "Heard you got one of those wretched letters." "News travels fast," Jerry said, keeping his tone light. "Any guesses who's behind them?" Mrs. Cleet's eyes narrowed. "I'd bet on Miss Ginch, always typing away, that one. And she's got a grudge against half the village." Joanna set down the tray, her smile sly. "Grudges make good motives." "Anyone else with a typewriter?" Mrs. Cleet shrugged. "Mr. Pye at the post office. Mr. Symington. Even the vicar's got one, though it's ancient. Could be anyone, really, back." On High Street, Jerry and Joanna paused by the war memorial, its stone weathered but proud. The village seemed to close ranks around them, its charm now laced with secrets. "Everyone's pointing fingers," Jerry said, his voice low. "Miss Ginch, Symington, even the vicar." Joanna grinned. "Makes it fun, doesn't it?" "Like a puzzle, or a snake pit," Jerry muttered. That evening, Ivy Cottage was alive, with the scent of partridges, roast chicken. Over dinner, Jerry and Joanna recounted the day's encounters. Partridge, setting down a bowl of peas, listened with a frown. "You're stirring a hornet's nest, asking questions like that." Joanna laughed, spearing a carrot. "Good. Maybe we'll flush out the writer." Partridge shook her head. "Mind you don't get stung." After dinner, they joined the village at the Green Dragon, a pub with low beams and a fire crackling. In the hearth, the room buzzed with locals, farmers, shopkeepers, and a few young men home from the war. Jerry and Joanna settled at a corner table, nursing pints of ale. A fiddler struck up a tune, and the crowd clapped along, the mood lighter than the vicarage's tension. Joanna nudged Jerry, nodding toward a woman by the bar, Miss Ginch, the seamstress, her grey hair pulled tight, her eyes darting. "There's our suspect," Joanna whispered. "Shall we?" Before Jerry could protest, Joanna sauntered over, her charm on full display. "Miss Ginch, isn't it? I'm Joanna Burton. I hear you're the best seamstress in Limstock." Miss Ginch's lips pursed, but she nodded. "I do well enough. What do you want?" "Just a chat," Joanna said, leaning closer. "Heard you've got a typewriter. Handy for business, I bet." Miss Ginch's eyes narrowed to slits. "What's that to you?" "I've no time for gossip." Jerry joined them, his tone easy. "No gossip, just curious. Seems typewriters are popular around here." Miss Ginch snorted, turning away. "Mind your own business, newcomers." As she stalked off, Joanna grinned. "Touchy, isn't she?" Jerry frowned. "Touchy doesn't mean guilty." The fiddler's tune reached a crescendo, and the pub erupted in cheers. Couples twirled in a makeshift dance, and Joanna pulled Jerry to his feet, ignoring his protests. "Come on, you're not that frail. Dance with me," he relented, his cane propped against the table. The music swept them up, and for a moment the letter's shadow lifted. Joanna's laughter rang out, and Jerry felt a spark of his old self before the crash, before the war. The villagers clapped, some joining the dance, others raising glasses. Mr. Pye, resplendent in a purple waistcoat, toasted them from across the room. Even Mrs. Cleet, swaying with a pint, gave a grudging nod as the song ended. Jerry and Joanna returned to their table, breathless. "See," Joanna said, her eyes shining. "Limstocks, not all poison pens. There's life here." Jerry nodded, his heart lighter. "Let's hold on to that. The letter's just a shadow. We won't let it ruin this." They clinked glasses, the ale's warmth sealing their resolve. Outside, the moon hung low over Limstock, its light glinting on quiet windows. The poison pen might still be typing, but for tonight, the villager's heartbeat drowned it out. Chapter 3. A Death in the Shadows. The morning mist clung to Limstock's lanes, softening the edges of the village as Jerry Burton and Joanna stepped out of Ivy Cottage. The memory of last night's lively dance at the Green Dragon lingered, but the anonymous letters cast a persistent shadow. Jerry's cane sank slightly into the damp earth as they headed toward the market square, where stalls were being set up for the weekly farmers' market. Joanna, in a navy coat that set off her blonde curls, scanned the crowd. "Let's keep our ears open," she said. "Someone's bound to let something slip about those letters." The square bustled with activity. Farmers hawked apples and cheeses, children chased a stray dog, and women in headscarves bartered over jars of honey. Jerry's gaze drifted to a familiar figure, Mr. Symington, the solicitor, standing by a stall, his face drawn as he spoke to a ruddy-cheeked vendor. Nearby, his governess, Elsie Holland, shepherded two young boys, their faces sticky with toffee. But it was the girl trailing behind them who caught Jerry's eye. Megan Hunter, Mrs. Symington's daughter from her first marriage, a lanky with a mop of dark hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. "She looks out of place," Jerry murmured, nodding toward Megan, "like she doesn't belong in her own family." Joanna followed his gaze. "Poor thing, let's say hello. Maybe she's heard something about the letters." They approached, and Elsie introduced them with a strained smile. "Mr. Burton, Miss Burton, these are Richard and Colin Symington, and this is Megan." The boys, perhaps 10 and 8, gave shy nods before darting off to a sweet stall. Megan lingered, her hands stuffed in the pockets of a shapeless cardigan, settling in. Joanna asked, her tone warm, "Limstock must feel quiet after wherever you were before." Megan shrugged, her voice flat. "London, it's fine here. Nobody bothers me." Jerry sensed a wall behind her words, but pressed gently. "Heard about the letters going around. We got one. Nasty stuff." Megan's eyes flickered, not with surprise, but something sharper curiosity, perhaps. "Mother got one too. Made her cry. She didn't show me, but I heard her talking to Mr. Symington about it." Joanna leaned closer. "Any idea who's sending them?" Megan's lips twitched, almost a smirk. "Could be anyone. People here smile, but they're always watching." Before Jerry could probe further, Elsie called Megan back, her voice edged with impatience. As the girl shuffled away, Jerry exchanged a look with Joanna. "She knows something," he said, "or sees something we don't." The market visit yielded little else whispers of letters, but no new suspects. Back at Ivy Cottage, Partridge greeted them with a frown and a letter in her hand. "This came for you, Mr. Burton, same as before. No return address." Jerry's stomach tightened as he took the envelope. The same cheap paper, the same uneven type. He read aloud, You think you're clever, snooping around. Leave Limstock's secrets alone, or you'll regret it. Joanna's eyes blazed. They're watching us now. This is personal. Partridge crossed her arms. I told you, asking questions stirs trouble. Best burn it and move on. Jerry shook his head, folding the letter carefully. Not this time. This isn't just a prank anymore. That afternoon, they visited the Symington house. A Georgian affair with tall windows and a clipped lawn. Mrs. Symington had invited them for lunch. A gesture Jerry suspected was more about sizing up the newcomers than hospitality. The dining room was heavy with mahogany and the scent of roast lamb. Mrs. Symington, a delicate woman with nervous hands, presided over the table, her smile brittle. Mr. Symington sat at the head, his manner formal, while Elsie and the boys ate in silence. Megan, slouched in her chair, picked at her food. Such a charming village, Mrs. Symington said, her voice high and forced. Though these letters are distressing. Joanna, ever bold, leaned forward. We got another today. A threat. Really? Have you had more? Mrs. Symington's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Another? No. Just the one. It was unkind. Her eyes darted to her husband, who cleared his throat. Let's not dwell on nonsense, Mr. Symington said. The police are handling it. Jerry studied him, noting the tight lines around his mouth. Any leads from the police, then? None worth mentioning, Mr. Symington replied, his tone clipped. Pass the potatoes, Elsie. The meal dragged on, the conversation stilted. Megan's silence was loudest of all, her gaze flitting between her mother and stepfather. As they left, Jerry caught her in the hall, slipping on her coat. Megan, if you know anything about the letters, you can tell us. We're not here to judge. She hesitated, then shook her head. I don't know anything. But Mother's scared. More than she lets on. That evening, the village was quiet, the air heavy with the promise of rain. Jerry and Joanna were halfway through a game of cards when Partridge burst in, her face pale. It's Mrs. Symington. She's dead. Found her in her parlour an hour ago. Jerry's cards slipped from his hand. Dead. How? Partridge's voice shook. They're saying suicide. Took something pills maybe. There was a note. Joanna stood, her chair scraping the floor. A note, like the letters. Not typed, Partridge said. Handwritten. I can't go on, it said. That's what Lily from the cafe told me. Jerry's mind raced. The letter in his pocket, the threat fresh in his memory, felt heavier now. We need to see the scene. Something's not right. They hurried to the Symington house, where a small crowd had gathered neighbours. The constable, Dr. Griffith. The parlour was cordoned off, but Jerry glimpsed Mrs. Symington's body through the open door, slumped in an armchair, a glass of water spilled on the rug. The constable, a burly man named Graves, was questioning Mr. Symington, who stood rigid, his face ashen. She was upset about the letter, Mr. Symington said, his voice hollow. But I never thought. This Dr. Griffith emerged, his bag in hand. Barbiturates, he said quietly to the constable. Enough to kill her quickly. Joanna pulled Jerry aside, her voice low. Suicide, my foot. She gets a letter, and now she's dead. It's too convenient. Jerry nodded, his eyes scanning the room. A small table held a crumpled piece of paper, the note, presumably. But something else caught his attention. A single teacup, half full, on a sideboard, its saucer slightly askew. That cup, he whispered. It doesn't fit. The glass spilled, but the cups untouched. Before he could investigate, Constable Graves ushered them out. "No gawking, please. This is a tragedy, not a spectacle." Back at Ivy Cottage, Jerry couldn't shake the image of the teacup. Over cocoa, he and Joanna debated. If she took pills, why the teacup, he said. And the note handwritten, not typed. It's different from the others. Joanna's eyes narrowed. Someone wanted it to look like suicide. But who? Symington. He's cold as ice. Or Elsie, Jerry said. She's always there, watching. And Megan, she knows something, I'm sure of it. Partridge, clearing the cups, snorted. You're playing detective now. Leave it to the police. But Jerry's resolve hardened. The police think it's suicide. I don't. Tomorrow I'm going back to that house. There's more to this than a note. Joanna grinned, her earlier shock giving way to determination. Count me in, but we need to be careful. Someone's playing a dangerous game. The next morning, the coroner's verdict came through, delivered by a grim-faced Mr. Pye at the post office. Suicide, he said, his voice heavy with drama. Poor woman. Driven to it by those wretched letters. Jerry's jaw tightened. Driven to it, or pushed. Mr. Pye's eyes widened, but he said nothing, turning to sort letters. As Jerry and Joanna stepped into the grey dawn, the village felt different, its charm tainted by death. Megan's words echoed in Jerry's mind. People here smile, but they're always watching. At Ivy Cottage, they found a note slipped under the door. Not typed, but scrawled in black ink. Stop asking questions, or you'll be next. Joanna's hand shook as she read it, but her voice was steady. They're scared. That means we're close. Jerry folded the note, his heart pounding but his mind clear. Then we keep going. For Mrs. Symington, they sat by the fire. The note between them, their resolve, a quiet flame against the gathering dark. Limstock's secrets were unraveling, and Jerry knew they couldn't turn back now. Chapter 4. The maid's last call. The dawn broke over Limstock with a reluctant grey light, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth. Jerry Burton stood at Ivy Cottage's window, the scrawled note from last night's stop asking questions. Or you'll be next clutched in his hand. Mrs. Symington's death, ruled as suicide, gnawed at him. The image of the misplaced teacup in her parlour, a persistent thorn in his thoughts. Joanna, already dressed in a russet sweater, joined him, her face set with determination. We can't stop now, she said, her voice low. That note proves we're rattling someone. Jerry nodded, slipping the note into his pocket. Let's start with the Symington house. Megan might know something, and I want another look at that parlour. They set out, the village quiet save for the distant clatter of a milk cart. The Symington house loomed at the end of High Street, its windows dark, the garden wilted under the weight of grief. Before they could knock, the door opened, revealing Elsie Holland, the governess. Her chestnut hair pulled back, her eyes red-rimmed. You shouldn't be here, she said, her voice tight. It's not a good time. We just want to pay our respects, Joanna said smoothly, her London charm softening the lie, and see Megan. She seemed upset yesterday. Elsie hesitated, then stepped aside. She's in the library. But don't stay long. Mr. Symington's with the solicitor. The library was a dim room, its shelves heavy with leather-bound books and the air thick with dust. Megan Hunter sat curled in a window seat, a book unopened in her lap, her dark eyes fixed on the rain-streaked glass. She looked up as they entered, her expression wary but curious. What do you want? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jerry leaned on his cane, keeping his tone gentle. "We're sorry about your mother, Megan. We're trying to understand what happened. Did she say anything about the letters before?" Megan's fingers tightened on the book. "She didn't talk to me much, but she was scared. Kept saying someone was out to ruin her." Joanna sat beside her, her voice soft. "Did she mention anyone specific? A name, maybe?" Megan shook her head, but her gaze flickered toward the door. Agnes might know. The maid. She heard things talking to Mr. Symington late at night. Jerry's pulse quickened. "Agnes, where can we find her?" "She's off today," Megan said. "Lives in the cottage by the mill, but she's jumpy. Said she wanted to talk to someone, but not me." They thanked Megan and left, the girl's words echoing in Jerry's mind. The mill was a short walk, its wheel creaking lazily by the river. The cottage beside it was small, its roof sagging, a single geranium pot bright against the weathered wood. Jerry knocked, but no answer came. The door was ajar, creaking as he pushed it open. "Agnes," he called. The room was tidy, but sparse: a table, a chair, a kettle on the stove. A single photograph hung on the wall. A young woman, presumably. Agnes, smiling beside an older couple. Joanna stepped inside, her brow furrowed. "She's not here." Odd. Leaving the door open. Jerry's unease grew. "Let's check with Partridge. She might know where Agnes is." Back at Ivy Cottage. Partridge was kneading dough, her hands dusted with flour. "Agnes, she came by this morning, all in a state. Said she needed to tell me something about the Symingtons, but the baker's boy interrupted, and she left. Promised to come back tonight." Jerry exchanged a glance with Joanna. "What time?" he asked. "After supper," Partridge said, her eyes narrowing. "You think she's mixed up in this letter business?" "Not sure," Jerry said, keeping his tone neutral. "But we'll be here when she comes." The day dragged, the rain a steady patter against the windows. Jerry sketched in his notebook, trying to piece together the puzzle. Mrs. Symington's death, the teacup, Megan's cryptic hints, and now Agnes's urgency. Joanna paced, her energy barely contained. If Agnes knows something, it could break. "This open," she said. "But why's she's so scared?" Supper came and went. Partridge's vegetable stew, hearty but tasteless to Jerry's distracted palate. As the clock struck 8, a knock sounded, but it wasn't Agnes. Dr. Owen Griffith stood at the door, his coat damp, his face grim. "Heard you're asking about Agnes," he said without preamble. "She's not at her cottage. I checked on my rounds." Joanna frowned. "Why were you looking for her?" Griffith hesitated, wiping rain from his glasses. "She came to the shop yesterday, nervous as a cat. Said she'd overheard something at the Symingtons. Wouldn't say what. I told her to go to the police, but she wouldn't." Jerry's heart sank. "And now she's gone." Griffith nodded. "Her neighbour saw her leave this morning, heading toward High Street. That's all I know." After Griffith left, Jerry and Joanna sat by the fire, the weight of Agnes's absence pressing down. "We need to find her," Jerry said. "If she overheard something, she's in danger." Joanna's eyes flashed. "Or she's the one sending the letters. Maybe she's running." They agreed to search in the morning, but sleep eluded Jerry. He lay awake, the rain's rhythm mingling with his thoughts. Agnes's disappearance felt like a thread unraveling, pulling at the fabric of Limstock's secrets. At dawn, they returned to the Symington house, hoping for answers. Mr. Symington answered the door, his face haggard, his tie askew. "What now?" he snapped. Haven't we had enough? We're looking for Agnes, Jerry said, keeping his voice steady. She might know something about your wife's death. Symington's eyes narrowed. Agnes, she's a maid, nothing more. Probably off visiting family. Joanna stepped forward, her tone sharp. She was scared, Mr. Symington. Said she overheard something here. Care to explain? His face flushed. You're out of line. Get out. Before they could argue, Megan appeared, her cardigan slipping off one shoulder. She's not at her cottage, she said quietly. I checked. Something's wrong. Jerry's gut twisted. Megan, come with us. You shouldn't stay here alone. She hesitated, then nodded, grabbing a coat. They walked back to Ivy Cottage, Megan silent. Between them, Partridge, seeing their grim faces, set out tea without a word. No sign of Agnes? She asked. None, Jerry said. But we're not giving up. That afternoon, Jerry convinced Constable Graves to search the Symington house, citing Agnes's disappearance. They arrived with Megan, who clung to Joanna's side. The house felt colder now, its elegance hollow. Graves, a methodical man, checked the kitchen, the bedrooms, the attic. As they reached the ground floor, Jerry noticed a narrow door under the staircase, half hidden by a coat rack. What's this? He asked, pointing. Symington, trailing behind, shrugged. Storage, nothing there. Jerry opened it, the hinges creaking. Inside, the air was stale, and a shape lay crumpled in the darker body. Joanna gasped, and Megan stifled a cry. It was Agnes, her eyes wide, a scarf tight around her neck. Graves knelt, his face grim. Strangled, not long ago, maybe last night. Jerry's mind raced, the teacup from Mrs. Symington's parlour flashing in his memory. This isn't suicide, he said. Someone's covering their tracks. Symington staggered back, his face white. I had no idea. Megan's voice was a whisper. She knew something. That's why she's dead. The constable sent for Dr. Griffith, who confirmed the cause of death. The village buzzed with shock, whispers of a murderer replacing talk of letters. At Ivy Cottage, Jerry and Joanna sat with Megan, who stared into her tea, her hands trembling. You can stay here, Joanna said gently. You're safe with us. Megan nodded, her eyes distant. I don't know what she heard, but it was enough to kill her. Jerry leaned forward, his cane tapping the floor. We'll find out, Megan. For Agnes, for your mother. The fire crackled, a small comfort against the growing chill. Outside, Limstock's quiet streets hid a killer, and Jerry felt the weight of their task. The letters were no longer a prank, they were a prelude to murder. But for tonight, Megan was safe, and that was enough to keep them going. Chapter 5. Tangled Hearts and Hidden Truths. The rain had ceased, leaving Limstock's lanes slick and gleaming under a tentative morning sun. Inside Ivy Cottage, the air was thick with the scent of toast and the weight of recent horrors. Jerry Burton sat at the breakfast table, his sketchbook open but untouched, his thoughts tangled with the image of Annis's body under the Symington staircase. Across from him, Megan Hunter hunched over a cup of tea, her dark hair falling like a curtain over her pale face. Joanna, in a bright yellow scarf, tried to coax a smile from her with a plate of scones, but the girl's eyes remained distant. You don't have to talk, Megan, Joanna said softly, setting the plate down. But you're safe here. We'll sort this out. Megan's fingers tightened around her cup. Agnes was kind to me. She didn't deserve that. Jerry leaned forward, his cane resting against the table. Did she ever mention what she overheard, anything about your mother or the letters? Megan shook her head, her voice barely audible. She just said she heard Mr. Symington arguing with someone. Not mother, someone else. She was scared to say more. Joanna's eyes met Jerry's, a spark of determination in them. We need to dig deeper. Agnes's death means the killer's getting bold. A knock at the door interrupted them. Partridge ushered in Constable Graves, his uniform damp from the morning's mist. His face was grim, his notebook clutched tightly. Morning, Mr. Burton. Miss Burton. I need to speak with Miss Hunter. Megan shrank back, but Jerry stood, his tone firm. She's staying with us for now. Whatever you need to ask, you can. Do it here. Graves nodded, settling into a chair. Fair enough. Miss Hunter, did Agnes ever confide in you about anything unusual at the Symington house? Before your mother's passing? Megan's gaze flickered to the window. She said Mr. Symington was angry a lot. Not just with mother, with someone on the telephone. She didn't know who. Graves jotted a note, his brow furrowed. Anything else? About the letters, maybe. Nothing, Megan said, but she was nervous after Mother died. Kept looking over her shoulder. After Graves left, promising to investigate the telephone calls, Jerry felt a restless energy. We can't wait for the police, he said. To Joanna, let's talk to the neighbors. Someone must have seen Agnes before she disappeared. They left Megan with Partridge and headed to the row of cottages near the Symington house. The first door they knocked on belonged to Mrs. Baker, a wiry woman with a face like a dried apple, tending a small herb garden. Agnes, she said, straightening. Saw her 2 days ago, hurrying down the lane at dusk. Looked like she was headed to the churchyard. The churchyard? Joanna asked, her brow arching. Why there? Mrs. Baker shrugged, snipping. A sprig of rosemary. No idea. She was clutching something, a letter, maybe. Didn't stop to chat. The churchyard was a short walk, its ancient use casting long shadows over mossy gravestones. The church itself was a stone relic, its spire piercing the sky. Inside, the air was cool, smelling of wax and old hymnals. The vicar, Mr. Calthrop, was polishing a brass candlestick, his movements slow and deliberate. Mr. Burton, Miss Burton. He greeted, his voice soft. A sad business, Agnes's death. Have you come to pray? Not exactly, Jerry said, scanning the pews. Mrs. Baker said Agnes was here 2 days ago. Did you see her? Mr. Calthrop paused, his eyes distant. Yes, she came in briefly, seemed agitated, said she needed to clear her conscience, but wouldn't elaborate. I suggested she speak to the police, but she left in a hurry. Joanna stepped closer, her voice gentle but probing. Did she leave anything behind? A note, maybe. The vicar shook his head. Nothing, but she was clutching her apron, as if hiding something. Outside the churchyard was quiet, the gravestones silent witnesses. Jerry's gaze fell on a fresh bouquet of daisies tucked against a headstone recent, unlike the wilted flowers nearby. Joanna, look at this, he said, kneeling despite the ache in his leg. Beneath the bouquet was a folded paper, damp but intact. He unfolded it carefully, a typed note, like the others, accusing Agnes of stealing from the Symington household. Joanna's breath caught. She got one too, but why hide it here? Jerry's mind raced. Maybe she was going to show someone she trusted, but the killer got to her first. They pocketed the note and returned to Ivy Cottage, where Megan was helping Partridge peel apples. The girl's eyes widened at the sight of the letter. "That's like the one Mother got," she whispered. "Same typing." Jerry nodded, his resolve hardening. "We need to talk to Elsie Holland. She's been in that house every day. If anyone saw Agnes's movements, it's her." The Symington house was quieter now, the air heavy with loss. Elsie met them in the drawing room, her hands twisting a handkerchief. "I don't know what you want from me," she said, her voice strained. "Agnes was a good maid, but I didn't know her well." Jerry held up the note. "We found this. In the churchyard, Agnes had it. Did you ever see her with a letter like this?" Elsie's face paled, but she shook her head. "No, I never got one myself, if that's what you're asking." Joanna's eyes narrowed. "Never. Everyone else in the village seems to have. That's unusual." Elsie flushed, her hands stilling. "I don't know why. Maybe the writer doesn't care about me." Jerry studied her, noting the flicker of unease in her eyes. "What about Mr. Symington's telephone calls? Agnes overheard something, did you?" Elsie's lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't listen at doors, Mr. Burton. Now, please, I have the boys to look after." As they left, Joanna whispered, "She's hiding something. No letter. That's too convenient." Jerry nodded, his thoughts circling Elsie's guarded demeanor. "Let's try Dr. Griffith again. He's been cagey too." They found Griffith at the Bluebell Cafe, nursing a coffee, his ink-stained fingers tapping the table. The cafe was quiet, its lace curtains filtering the afternoon light. Griffith looked up, his face weary. "You two again, still playing detectives?" "We found a letter Agnes hid," Jerry said, keeping his voice low. "She was scared, and now she's dead." "You told her to go to the police. Did she say anything else?" Griffith sighed, rubbing his temples. "Only that she heard Symington on the phone, arguing about money. She thought it was odd, but she wouldn't say more. I told her to stay out of it." Joanna leaned forward, her voice sharp. "And now she's dead. Convenient for someone, isn't it?" Griffith's eyes flashed. "Don't look at me. I'm just the chemist, not a killer." As they left the cafe, the village felt smaller, its charm eroded by suspicion. Back at Ivy Cottage, a surprise awaited. Mrs. Dane Calthrop, the vicar's wife, stood in the parlour, her scarf a riot of orange and blue. "I've been thinking," she said, her eyes bright with purpose. "These letters, these deaths there, connected, and we're missing something. I'm sending for an expert." Jerry frowned. "An expert who?" Mrs. Dane Calthrop smiled, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "Someone who sees through people's masks. You'll meet her soon." That evening, the village gathered at the church hall for a memorial for Agnes. A subdued affair with hymns and whispered condolences. Jerry and Joanna attended, Megan between them, her presence a quiet anchor. The hall was lit by flickering candles, their light casting shadows on the faces of Limstock's residents, Mr. Pye, his waistcoat sombre for once, Mrs. Cleet dabbing her eyes, Miss Ginch standing apart, her face unreadable, as the vicar spoke of Agnes's kindness. Jerry's gaze drifted to Elsie, who stood with the Symington boys, her expression blank. Beside her, Mr. Symington's shoulders were stiff, his eyes fixed on the floor. Joanna nudged Jerry, whispering, "They're all here, but someone's acting." After the memorial, Megan tugged at Jerry's sleeve. "I want to help," she said, her voice firm despite her trembling hands. "Agnes was my friend. I can't just sit here. Jerry hesitated, then smiled, a warmth spreading through him. You're tougher than you look, catfish. Stick with us, and we'll figure this out. Megan's lips twitched, the first hint of a smile. Catfish, that's awful. Joanna laughed, squeezing her shoulder. It's perfect. Welcome to the team. As they walked home, the stars bright above Limstock, Jerry felt a spark of hope. The killer was close, their mistakes piling up, the hidden letter, Agnes's death. The telephone calls, Mrs. Dane Calthrop's mysterious expert loomed on the horizon, and with Megan's courage, they were no longer alone. The night was quiet, but the truth was stirring, and Jerry was ready to chase it. Chapter 6. The arrival of Miss Marple. The late morning sun cast dappled shadows through the elms lining Limstock's high street, but the village's warmth felt brittle to Jerry Burton. Agnes's murder and Mrs. Symington's questionable suicide weighed heavily, and the scrawled note stop asking questions, or you'll be next burned in his pocket. At Ivy Cottage, Megan Hunter sat by the window, her thin frame hunched over a borrowed book, her eyes flitting to the door as if expecting trouble. Joanna, tying a crimson scarf around her neck, caught Jerry's gaze. Mrs. Dane Calthrop's expert is coming today, she said. Let's hope they're as good as she thinks. Jerry nodded, his cane tapping the floor. Megan's with us now. We need answers, not just promises. Megan looked up, her voice soft but steady. I want to meet this expert, if they can. Help find who killed Agnes. I'm in. They set out for the vicarage, the air crisp with the scent of damp leaves. The village was subdued, its usual bustle muted by whispers of murder. At the Bluebell Calf, faces turned away as they passed, and Jerry felt the weight of unseen eyes. The vicarage gate creaked as they entered, the garden now a patchwork of fading asters and early autumn frost. Mrs. Dane Calthrop greeted them at the door, her scarf a vivid green that clashed with the sombre mood. She's here, she said, her eyes gleaming. Miss Marple. You're like her, she sees things others miss. Inside, the drawing room was warm, a fire crackling in the hearth. A small, elderly woman sat in an armchair, her white hair neatly pinned, her hands busy with a piece of knitting. Her eyes, bright and bird-like, flicked up as they entered, and Jerry felt an unexpected jolt like being sized up by a kindly but relentless judge. Mr. Burton, Miss Hunter, she said, her voice gentle but precise. Maud has told me about your troubles. Such a nasty business, these letters. Joanna sat across from her, her curiosity piqued. Mrs. Dane Calthrop says, you're an expert in human nature. Miss Marple smiled, her needles clicking. Oh, I wouldn't say expert, but village life is much the same everywhere, and I've seen my share of spite. These letters, you see, are not just cruel, they're clever. A distraction, perhaps. Jerry leaned forward, his cane forgotten. A distraction? From what? Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. That's what we must find out. Tell me, Mr. Burton, what have you noticed? You strike me as observant. Jerry recounted their discoveries. The anonymous letters, Mrs. Symington's death, the misplaced teacup, Agnes's murder, and the note found in the churchyard. Megan added, her voice steady, Agnes heard Mr. Symington arguing on the telephone. Something about money. Miss Marple nodded, her knitting never pausing. Money is a powerful motive, and the teacup most curious. Was it clean or used? Jerry frowned, recalling the scene, half full. The saucer was crooked, like it was. Set down in a hurry. Interesting, Miss Marple murmured. A small detail, but small details can unravel big lies. Mrs. Dane Calthrop clapped her hands. See, I told you she'd help. Now, what's next? Miss Marple set her knitting aside. I'd like to see the Symington house, if possible, and speak to those closest to the family. Small things, gestures, glances, often reveal more than words. They agreed to visit the Symington house that afternoon. As they left the vicarage, Joanna whispered to Jerry, "She's sharper than she looks, like a grandmother with a scalpel." Megan, trailing behind, managed a small smile. "I like her. She doesn't fuss." The Symington house was a shell of its former self, its windows dim, the garden untended. Mr. Symington answered the door, his face etched with exhaustion. "What now?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Haven't we been through enough?" Jerry introduced Miss Marple, who offered a disarming smile. "Just a neighborly visit, Mr. Symington. I'm staying with the Calthrops and heard about your loss. May we come in?" Symington hesitated, then stepped aside. The parlor was unchanged since Mrs. Symington's death, the spilled glass gone, but the sideboard still holding the teacup, now empty. Miss Marple's eyes lingered on it, then moved to the room's details, the faded wallpaper, the heavy drapes, a photograph of Mrs. Symington, her smile fragile even in memory. Elsie Holland joined them, her hands smoothing her skirt. "The boys are napping," she said. "It's been hard on them." Miss Marple nodded, her tone gentle. "Of course, my dear. You must be a great comfort. Have you been with the family long?" 2 years, Elsie said, her voice careful. "I try to keep things steady for the boys." "And the letters?" Miss Marple asked, her eyes soft but piercing. "You've never received one, I understand." "Most unusual." Elsie's cheeks flushed. "I suppose I'm lucky." "Or overlooked," Miss Marple said lightly, turning to examine a bookshelf. Jerry caught the subtle shift in Elsie's posture, a tightening of her shoulders. Symington cleared his throat. "If you're here to dig up more trouble, I'd rather you leave." Miss Marple smiled, unruffled. "No trouble, Mr. Symington. Just trying to understand. Grief can cloud things, can't it?" As they left, Miss Marple paused by the front gate, her gaze sweeping the street. "That teacup," she said quietly. "It doesn't belong in a suicide. And Miss Holland, she's guarding something, even if she doesn't know it." Megan, who had been silent, spoke up. "She's always watching Mr. Symington, like she's waiting for him to say something." Jerry's pulse quickened. "You think she's involved?" "Not necessarily," Miss Marple said. "But she's part of the pattern. We need to see more of Limstock's threads." That evening, they gathered at the vicarage for supper, a simple affair of shepherd's pie and cider. Mrs. Dane Calthrop pressed Miss Marple for insights, but the older woman was cryptic, her attention on a small notebook where she jotted observations. "The letters are a smokescreen," she said at last. "They accuse everyone except Miss Holland. Why? And Mrs. Symington's death, too tidy, too convenient." Joanna leaned forward, her cider untouched. "You think it's murder, Miss?" Marple's eyes met hers. "I think someone wanted her gone, and Agnes saw or heard too much. But we need proof, not guesses." Jerry felt a spark of admiration for the old woman's calm precision. "What's our next move?" "Observe," Miss Marple said. "People reveal themselves in small ways. Tomorrow, I'd like to meet Dr. Griffith and Mr. Pye, and Miss Ginch. Perhaps she's been mentioned often." The next morning, they visited the post office. where Mr. Pye was sorting mail, his velvet waistcoat a splash of burgundy. "Miss Marple," he exclaimed, his eyes gleaming, "a pleasure. I hear you're unravelling our little mystery." Miss Marple smiled, her knitting tucked under her arm. "Just visiting, Mr. Pye. You must see all sorts in the post. Any odd letters lately?" Pye's smile faltered. "Odd, well, those anonymous ones, of course. Typed on cheap paper, posted locally." "I've told the police all I know, of course," Miss Marple said, her tone mild. "And your typewriter, do you lend it out?" Pye bristled, his hands pausing over a stack of envelopes. "Certainly not. It's for official use only." As they left, Miss Marple murmured, "He's nervous. Not guilty, perhaps, but he knows more than he says." Their next stop was Dr. Griffith's chemist shop, its shelves lined with bottles and the air sharp with antiseptic. Griffith was compounding a prescription, his movements precise. "You're persistent," he said, glancing at Jerry, "and you've brought a new friend." Miss Marple introduced herself, her voice warm. "I'm just passing through, Dr. Griffith, but I'm curious about Agnes. She came to you, didn't she?" Griffith's hand stilled. "She did. Said she was worried about something she'd heard at the Wouldn't say what." "I told her to go to the police." "And her letter?" Miss Marple asked. "The one accusing her of theft?" Griffith frowned. "She never showed me one. But she was scared, that's certain." "Outside," Joanna whispered. To Jerry, everyone's scared or hiding something. "It's like the whole village is in on it." Miss Marple overheard, her smile wry. "Not the whole village, my dear. Just one or two, weaving a clever web." That afternoon, they attended a village knitting circle at the church hall, where Miss Marple blended seamlessly with the local women. Miss Ginch was there, her needles clicking furiously, her eyes darting. When Miss Marple complimented her work, Miss Ginch softened slightly. "You're the one asking about the letters," she said. "I've had one myself. Called me a gossip, me." Miss Marple nodded sympathetically. "Most unfair. Did you keep it?" "Burned it," Miss Ginch said. "No use dwelling on poison." As they left the hall, Miss Marple's eyes were thoughtful. "Miss Ginch is angry, but not guilty. The letters are too calculated for her temper." Back at Ivy Cottage, Megan was waiting, her face brighter than before. "I remembered something," she said. "The day Mother died, I saw a scrap of paper in her hand, not the suicide note. It was typed, like the letters, but torn. I didn't think it mattered then." Miss Marple's eyes sharpened. "Torn, you say? Where is it now?" Megan shook her head. "Gone. I looked for it after, but it wasn't there." Jerry felt a surge of hope. That's our proof. The suicide note was handwritten, but this typed scrap-it could mean someone planted it. Miss Marple nodded, her knitting resumed. "A small thread, but it's pulling. We're close, Mr. Burton, very close." That night, the fire crackled in Ivy Cottage, and Megan's small smile was a victory. Miss Marple's presence was a quiet anchor, her insights sharpening their resolve. Limstock's secrets were unraveling, and Jerry knew the next step would bring them face to face with the truth. Chapter 7. The Web of Deceptions. The morning light filtered through Ivy Cottage's laced curtains, casting delicate patterns on the oak table where Jerry Burton sat, his sketchbook pushed aside. The torn typed paper Megan had mentioned last night, a fleeting clue to Mrs. Symington's death, gnawed at his thoughts, its absence a taunting void. Across the room, Megan Hunter stirred sugar into her tea, her thin fingers steadier now. Buoyed by Miss Marple's quiet confidence, Joanna, her crimson scarf swapped for a deep blue one, paced by the hearth. "That scrap of paper," she said, her voice sharp. "It's the key, isn't it? We need to find it." Miss Marple, knitting in an armchair, looked up, her eyes bright. "Indeed, Miss Burton. A typed note, torn and missing, suggests someone was desperate to hide it. But we must also consider the lies people tell themselves. They're often the most revealing." Jerry leaned forward, his cane tapping the floor. "You think someone's covering more than just the murders?" Miss Marple's needles clicked. "Murder is rarely simple, Mr. Burton. It's tangled with greed, fear, or love. We need to see who's weaving the tightest web." Megan set her cup down, her voice soft but firm. "I want to help. I can watch the Symington house. I know its corners better than anyone." Joanna grinned, squeezing Megan's shoulder. "Our catfish is growing claws. All right, let's make a plan." They decided to split their efforts. Miss Marple and Joanna would visit Miss Emily Barton, the spinster who'd admitted to receiving a letter but stayed tight-lipped about its contents. Jerry and Megan would return to the Symington house, hoping to uncover the missing paper or catch Elsie Holland off guard. As they left Ivy Cottage, Limstock's streets were alive with the clatter of market day, but the air felt charged, as if the village itself held its breath. Miss Marple and Joanna arrived at Miss Barton's cottage, a prim dwelling with rose-patterned curtains and a polished brass knocker. Miss Barton greeted them, her laced collar stiff, her hands fluttering like nervous birds. "Miss Marple, Miss Burton," she said, her voice high. "What brings you here?" Miss Marple smiled, settling into a chintz chair with her knitting. "Just a neighbourly visit, Miss Barton. But I understand you've had one of those dreadful letters. Might you share what it said?" Miss Barton's cheeks flushed, her hands twisting a handkerchief. "It was unkind. Accused me of spreading rumours about the vicar. I burned it at once." Joanna leaned forward, her tone gentle. "But you kept it a secret. Why?" Miss Barton's eyes darted to the window. "I didn't want to cause a fuss. This village thrives on gossip. I thought, if I ignored it, it would stop." Miss Marple's needles paused. "And did it mention anything specific? A detail, perhaps, that felt too personal?" Miss Barton hesitated, then whispered, "It said I was jealous of Mrs. Dane Calthrop's influence, that I wanted to be the vicar's confidant." "It's nonsense, but it stung." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Truth or not, the writer knows how to wound. Thank you, Miss Barton. You've been most helpful." As they left, Joanna whispered, "She's hiding something, but it's not guilt. She's too fragile for murder." Miss Marple's smile was cryptic. "Fragile people can surprise you, my dear. But I agree she's not our spider." Meanwhile, Jerry and Megan approached the Symington house, its Georgian facade now a mask for tragedy. Elsie Holland answered the door, her chestnut hair loose, her expression wary. "Megan, you shouldn't be here," she said, then glanced at Jerry. "And you, Mr. Symington's not in." "We're not here for him," Jerry said, his tone even. "We need to look in the parlour again for something Megan saw. Piece of paper, typed, torn." Elsie's eyes widened, but she stepped aside. "I don't know what you're talking about. The police have been through everything." Megan led the way to the parlour, her steps sure despite the tension in her shoulders. The room was unchanged, the sideboard still holding the teacup, now clean. Jerry scanned the space, his gaze settling on a wastebasket by the fireplace. "Megan, where did you see the paper?" She pointed to a corner near the armchair where her mother had died. "There, on the floor. It was crumpled, like someone dropped it." Jerry knelt, ignoring the ache in his leg, and rifled through the wastebasket. Among ash and torn envelopes, he found a fragment of paper, its edge jagged, the typing faint but unmistakable. "You'll pay for your sins." It matched the style of the anonymous letters. Megan gasped. "That's it. That's what I saw." Elsie, hovering in the doorway, paled. "Where did that come from?" "I cleaned this room myself." Jerry stood, holding the fragment. "Then someone put it here after. Or you missed it." Elsie's hands clenched. "I'm not careless, Mr. Burton, and I'm not a liar." Megan's voice cut through, sharp. "You never got a letter, Elsie. Why? Everyone else did." Elsie's flush deepened, but before she could answer, a car pulled up outside. Mr. Symington strode in, his face thunderous. "What's this? You're upsetting my household again." Jerry held up the paper. "We found this. It's like the letters, and it was here the day your wife died." "Care to explain?" Symington's eyes narrowed. "You're out of line. That's nothing, probably a draft of something." Miss Marple and Joanna arrived, summoned by a quick telephone call from Megan. Miss Marple's gaze flicked from the paper to Symington's taut expression. "Mr. Symington," she said, her voice mild, "this fragment suggests someone was in this room, tampering with evidence. Perhaps you heard something that day." Symington's jaw tightened. "I was at my office. I told the police everything." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes never leaving him. "Of course, but small things like a telephone call can linger in memory." Symington turned away, dismissing them. As they left, Miss Marple murmured, "He's defensive, but not foolish. We need to tread carefully." That afternoon, they regrouped at the vicarage, where Mrs. Dane Calthrop served tea with a fierce determination to see justice done. Miss Marple spread the torn paper on the table, its words a chilling echo of the poison pen's venom. "This was meant to be destroyed," she said. "But the killer was careless or desperate." Jerry's mind raced. "If it's not Symington, then who? Elsie. She's the only one without a letter." Megan shook her head. "She's too proper. But she's always near Mr. Symington. Maybe she saw something she shouldn't." Joanna's eyes lit up. "What if we set a trap? Make the killer think we know more than we do?" Miss Marple's smile was approving. "A bold idea, Miss Burton. But we must be precise. The killer is watching, and they've killed twice." They devised a plan. Megan would return to the Symington house, acting nervous and hinting she'd found another clue. Jerry and Joanna would watch from a distance, with Constable Graves and Superintendent Nash, newly arrived from the county police, ready to intervene. Miss Marple would stay at the vicarage, coordinating with Mrs. Dane Calthrop to monitor village gossip. That evening, Megan walked to the Symington house, her cardigan loose, her steps deliberately hesitant. Jerry and Joanna hid in the shadow of a yew tree across the street, the air cool and heavy with impending dusk. Nash, a stocky man with a nonsense air, crouched nearby, his eyes fixed on the house. Megan knocked, and Elsie answered, her voice sharp. "Megan, what are you doing here? It's late." I found something," Megan said, her voice trembling just enough. "Another paper, like the one Mother had. I think it's important." Elsie's face was unreadable in the dim light. "Come inside. Show me." Jerry's pulse quickened as Megan disappeared into the house. Minutes ticked by, the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves. Then a shadow moved in the parlor window, a figure, not Elsie, but taller, broader. Symington. Nash signaled, his voice low. Something's off. We move now. They crossed the street, Nash leading with a quiet authority. The front door was ajar, and they slipped inside, hearing raised voices from the parlor. Megan's voice was high, panicked. I didn't mean to find it. It was in your desk, Mr. Symington. Symington's reply was cold. You should have stayed out of it, Megan. Jerry burst in, Nash at his side, Joanna close behind. Symington stood over Megan, a typed letter in his hand, his face a mask of fury. Elsie, frozen by the sideboard, clutched the teacup from Mrs. Symington's death. Nash stepped forward, his voice firm. Step back, Symington. We need to talk. Symington's eyes darted to the door, but Nash blocked his path. Megan, trembling but defiant, pointed to the letter. It's another one. I found it in his study. It's not like the others, it's about him and Elsie. Miss Marple, arriving with Mrs. Dane Calthrop, took in the scene with a calm nod. A trap well set, Miss Hunter. That letter confirms what I suspected. The letters were a distraction. But the real motive lies closer to home. Symington's shoulders slumped, but he said nothing. Elsie's voice broke the silence, a whisper. I didn't know, I swear. The night ended with Nash taking Symington for questioning, the letter secured as evidence. At Ivy Cottage, Megan sat with Jerry and Joanna, her courage a quiet triumph. Miss Marple, knitting by the fire, smiled. You were brave, Miss Hunter. The truth is near now. Jerry felt a weight lift, Megan's safety a victory against the darkness. Lim's web was unraveling, and with Miss Marple's guidance, they were one step from the truth. Chapter 8. The poison pen's final stroke. The dawn over Limstock was a quiet one. The sky streaked with rose and gold, as if the village exhaled after weeks of holding its breath. Inside Ivy Cottage, Jerry Burton sat by the fire, his cane propped against the wall, no longer a crutch but a companion. The events of last night, the confrontation at the Symington house, Megan's brave baiting of the killer, and the damning letter found in Symington's study lingered like a storm's aftershock. Joanna, her blue scarf loosed around her shoulders, poured tea, her eyes bright with anticipation. Megan Hunter, now a fixture at their table, nibbled a biscuit, her face softer but still shadowed by loss. Miss Marple, knitting in her usual armchair, radiated a calm that anchored them all. The letter Megan found, Jerry said, breaking the silence. It's the key, isn't it? It wasn't like the others. Miss Marple's needles clicked, her voice serene. Indeed, Mr. Burton, the other letters were broad, spiteful jabs, meant to unsettle the village. This one specific personal point, to a deeper motive, we must see it in context. Megan set her biscuit down, her voice steady. It mentioned Mr. Symington and Elsie. Something about a promise. I didn't read it, all he caught me. Joanna leaned forward, her tea forgotten. A promise, like a deal, or something romantic. Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. Love, or the illusion of it, can be as deadly as greed. We'll know soon enough. Superintendent Nash will have questions for Mr. Symington today. A knock. At the door heralded Mrs. Dane Calthrop, her scarf a vivid purple, her energy undimmed by the hour. Nash is at the station, she announced. Symington's there, and Elsie's been called in. I say we go see this through. Jerry glanced. At Megan, who nodded, her jaw set. I want to be there. For Mother, for Agnes. They set out, the village waking slowly, its cobbles slick with morning dew. The police station, a squat building by the market square, buzzed with a quiet intensity. Superintendent Nash greeted them, his face lined but resolute. You've stirred the pot, Miss Marple, he said, a hint of respect in his tone. That letter's a goldmine. Come in, we're about to question Symington. The interrogation room was stark, its walls bare save for a cracked clock ticking above the door. Symington sat at a table, his suit rumpled, his stern face pale. Elsie Holland stood by a window, her hands twisting a scarf, her chestnut hair catching the light. Nash held the letter, its typed words stark against the cheap paper. You promised me a future, Symington. Your wife's gone, but I'm still waiting. Jerry's pulse quickened. The letter wasn't an accusation. It was a demand, intimate and raw. Miss Marple, seated beside him, watched Symington with her bird-like gaze, her knitting untouched. Nash's voice was steady. Mr. Symington, this was found in your study. Care to explain? Symington's eyes flickered, but his voice was cold. It's another of those wretched letters. Someone's trying to frame me. Elsie's voice broke, soft but sharp. Frame? You, it's addressed to you, Richard, and it's personal. Symington's head snapped toward her. You know nothing about it, Elsie. Stay out of this. Miss Marple leaned forward, her tone gentle but piercing. Mr. Symington, the other letters accused half the village, Mrs. Cleet, Miss Barton, even poor Agnes. But this one is different. It speaks of a promise, a future, and Miss Holland never received a letter. Why is that? Symington's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Elsie's face crumpled, her scarf slipping to the floor. I didn't want this, she whispered. I told you, Richard, it was wrong. Megan, standing by Joanna, gasped. You and Mr. Symington. Mother was still alive. Nash raised a hand, his eyes on Symington. Let's hear it, sir. The truth, now. Symington's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from him. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he said, his voice low. Mona, my wife, was unhappy. The letters, they gave me an idea. I wrote them, all of them, to make her seem unstable, to make her death look like suicide. Jerry's stomach twisted, the pieces falling into place. The torn paper, Agnes's fear. You killed her, he said, his voice hard. And Agnes, because she overheard your plans. Symington's eyes were hollow. Agnes heard me on the phone with Elsie, discussing our future. I couldn't let her talk. I didn't mean to kill her. It was panic. Elsie sobbed, her hands covering her face. I didn't know he'd go that far. I thought the letters were just cruel. I didn't want Mona dead. Miss Marple's voice was calm, cutting through the tension. You wrote the letters to distract, Mr. Symington, to make the village suspect everyone but you. But the teacup gave you a wit. Wasn't Mona's, was it? You drugged her tea, not the glass, and left it to confuse the scene. Head bowed, his confession a whisper. I loved Elsie. Mona was an obstacle. The letters were a smokescreen. I typed them on my office machine, sent them to everyone but Elsie to keep her safe. Nash signaled to Constable Graves, who stepped forward with handcuffs. Richard Symington, you're under arrest for the murders of Mona Symington and Agnes Waddle. As Symington was led away, Elsie collapsed into a chair, her sobs muffled. Megan, tears in her eyes, turned to Miss Marple. "You knew, didn't you? From the start." Miss Marple's smile was gentle. "Not from the start, my dear, but people are predictable in their way. Love and greed make such terrible partners." Outside, the village was waking fully, unaware of the storm that had broken. Jerry, Joanna, Megan, and Miss Marple walked back to Ivy Cottage, the weight of truth settling around them. Mrs. Dane Calthrop joined them, her scarf fluttering like a victory flag. "You did it," she said, clapping Miss Marple's shoulder. "Lymstock's free of its poison." At the cottage, Partridge had set out a spread scones jam and fresh tea, a quiet celebration. Jerry watched Megan, who sat closer to Joanna, her face lighter despite her grief. "What now?" he asked, his voice soft. "You're part of this place, Megan, but it's been cruel to you." Megan's lips curved, a faint echo of her mother's smile. "I'll stay, for now. With you and Joanna, I want to start again." Joanna grinned, nudging her. "Our catfish is staying. Good, we need you." Miss Marple, packing her knitting, looked up. "You've all been splendid. Lymstock will heal, in time. But I must return to St. Mary Mead. My garden needs tending." Jerry stood, offering his hand. "You've saved us, Miss Marple. Thank you." She shook his hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "Nonsense, Mr. Burton. You and Miss Hunter were the brave ones. I merely saw the pattern." That afternoon, the village gathered at the Green Dragon for an impromptu gathering, the air warm with relief. The fiddler played a lively tune, and faces once shadowed by fear now glowed with cautious hope. Mr. Pye, in a peacock blue waistcoat, raised a glass to new beginnings. Mrs. Cleet, her florid face beaming, passed out slices of her famous fruitcake. Even Miss Ginch, her sharp edges softened, joined the dance. Jerry and Megan stood by the bar, watching Joanna twirl with Dr. Griffith, whose ink-stained fingers fumbled but whose smile was genuine. "She's smitten," Jerry said, grinning. "Poor chap doesn't stand a chance." Megan laughed, a sound like bells. "She's good for him, and you're good for me, Jerry." He looked at her, the scar above his brow softening in the firelight. "Catfish, I'm the lucky one. You've got grit. We'll make this place home yet." As the night wound down, they stepped outside, the stars bright above Lymstock. The poison pen was silenced, its venom drained by truth. Symington's confession had closed the book on the murders, and Elsie, though complicit in silence, faced no charges. Her guilt was punishment enough. The village, scarred but resilient, turned toward healing. Jerry and Megan walked back to Ivy Cottage, Joanna trailing behind, her arm linked with Griffith's. The air was crisp, the scent of autumn leaves mingling with the promise of new days. Jerry's cane tapped the cobbles, a steady rhythm, and Megan's hand brushed his, a quiet vow. Lymstock was theirs now, not a postcard but a home, its secrets laid bare, its heart beating strong.